All right, welcome back to Your Voice Masterclass webinar series. We're so excited to have you back. This one is going to be a great one with tell your story, because this is what really your voice is all about. It's about your story. I'm Fireman Rob. Most people know me as that. I've been a speaker for many, many years, and I'm also the co-founder of Your Voice Masterclass with Amy. Amy, tell them about yourself.
Hi, I'm Amy Noobson, and I am your co host today. And Rebrand You is my coaching program. And I found my voice by doing these techniques, doing these strategies. And I found that I came alive. I found out who I was. I am really proud of where I've gotten. And it's all because of Your Voice masterclasses, techniques, and strategies.
I love that. That's perfect.
It's true.
It's true. That's the best part about it, and
Yes.
and today, the seminar topic is tell your story. It's really about reconnecting yourself with the driving force that pushes you forward, the why in your life that makes you run through walls, it makes you accomplish goals. Well, and maybe it's even just the stories that get you through the day, that wake you up in the morning. That's really what it comes down to. It's about telling your story. It's that first step in finding that powerful voice that you have, right, Amy?
Oh my gosh, every time you think about quitting or you're like, is this matter or is this having any kind of results? I think of
Yeah,
my purpose. I think of the stories I have inside me that are ready to be shared, and it motivates me to keep going.
yeah,
And that's what I love about this is we're able to spread our voices all different areas. And when we know them and we are confident in sharing them, you can tell them in the boardroom, or if you're just going to a networking event and you just happen to meet somebody new, you could pull out a story that might be relatable to them based on what they've already shared with you. And of course, it's always about like what Rob does with the speaking engagements, keynotes. It's developing those stories in a way that connects to others. How about you, Rob? Where do you find outside of speaking that you
it's
can share your
everywhere.
voice?
It's
Right?
literally everywhere, because you're developing your message, who you are. Throughout life, we've developed who we are, from experiences to our education to all sorts of things. But rarely do we take that time to reflect and find out what these stories are and how these stories will actually correlate to somebody else by sharing our life experiences, by expressing what these stories mean to us. These memorable points in our life are so important in connecting not only us to us, but us emotionally to other people. And that's really what telling your story is all about. And it's this is a powerful one that, like we've said before, in every single one of these webinars, there's a lot of different ways that you can do things. There's a lot of different people that tell you different things of how they succeed. By all means, listen. That's so important to have that educational component of understanding a lot of different components. We're telling you from our experience, and we're kind of successful.
Exactly.
That this is
And
what worked.
yeah, and it worked for us, and we've seen it work for others as well. So try it on. Don't try to just take pieces of it. Really go through the whole thing. And today is all about telling your story. So of course we have a strategy for how to do that. It's really about identifying those moments in your life where you've been influenced or you've influenced others. And it could have a positive or a negative aspect in your life. I usually think about these points are, especially in childhood, those are easier to recognize right away when you're starting out looking for them because those are the ones you remember. There's so many moments you've forgotten and they didn't have a big impact on us. The ones you remember did. And those are the ones that stuck with you. So what are they? And we have this great worksheet that we're going to have access to, the impact points. This is something Rob's been developed and used for years. And it starts with that moment.
Right.
What
And
is
that,
it?
that right. And that moment, it's interesting, because when you're talking about childhood, a lot of times we don't realize um that within a larger moment, like, I always go back to 9/11 because it's a huge moment, but there was little moments with inside there that actually are more of the problem that comes out to the results, that comes back to,
Yes.
well, what did I experience from this? And I think that's what I want people to understand is, even going back to, like, you, Amy, you've said before, going back to that story catcher,
Yes.
is this is that building out from that story catcher, from those moments, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, it's taking that story catcher and then involving it, right? Is pushing past the obvious, like Rob said. We all had an impact moment of 9/11. Rob's going to be different than my impact of it, and by just stating it, we all go back to our own, but we don't see his if he doesn't go deeper into it. And we want to
Yeah,
identify with his perspective.
right.
And so that's why we want to do the positive and negative, because if you start to really look at some of those impact moments, some have both
Yeah,
and have created little threads through our lives that we didn't even recognize. And when I started doing this process, I realized these impact moments still were affecting my life. And it allowed me to say no more, or I love this part of myself. Like, yes, let's keep this going. This is where this came from. This is where the
right.
strength that I got.
And it adapts throughout life. And I think that's the one thing that people have to understand is that once you make this paper, it is not finite in granite. You can change it. Your impact points, your impact moments can change um, as your life progresses. And that's the thing that great speakers and great storytellers are able to do, is they're able to adapt their story as their life progresses. If the greatest thing that you ever did was in your childhood, and that's the story that you told all the way up until you're 70, that could be rough. Obviously there's going to be huge stories and huge accomplishments that people want to hear about,
Yeah.
but also making sure to understand that your journey through life is not dictated on the one moment that you sat down and looked at your stories.
Well, and the other way of thinking about that is like, are you the same person you were when you were 20, when
Right.
you were 10? No, we evolve. Things that were important to us when we were in 20s are not the same as when we're in our 40s or our 50s or 60s. So what's important to you right now? So though, like Rob said, those stories that you really matter might change because what you value or what you want to share have evolved. So those
Right.
things you want to kind of think through too. Like, yeah, back then that mattered to me, but now I'm like, I'm fine with that. I'm good. I healed past it. I'm no longer need to like talk about it, right?
Wrong, because I mean, then that's the other part of it, right?
Right.
Some of those things you always have to talk about, because
Some of them you do.
without
Yes.
them, you would not be the person that you are today. And I think that's where I want people to not get stuck.
Yeah.
Is like, we gave you two sides of the spectrum
Yep.
of, you can change your stories, but there's also stories that, like, from Amy's childhood, that made her who she is today, and that she's looked at and she goes, oh, I would have never pivoted this way if I didn't have that story. So make sure that when you're going through this process, that you are not negating a single story.
Yep.
This whole process needs you to be involved in it, and make sure to have an abundance of stories, and don't limit them by what you think is good. That's
Yeah.
the one thing that a lot of people do.
That's true. Because there are keystone stories of my life that if they didn't happen, they wouldn't show how I changed. They need to illustrate my journey. And those are my keystone stories, right? Those are the origin like of how my path turned out. And I remember hearing somebody say the same stories over and over and over again to different audiences. And I'm like, oh my God, I've heard this story so many times, but I had to remember like that audience was different every time. So they had to hear it over and over and over again. He had to tell it over and over again because they hadn't heard it and it was new for them.
Mm-hmm.
So even though it's maybe done over and over again, it still has value.
Right. And I think the biggest thing too, and we'll get into this chart because I think it's important to kind of go through it. But I
Yeah.
think the one big thing for you and everybody to understand is when you're talking about your stories, and what Amy and I are truly talking about is make sure that the why behind your voice, the why behind what you're saying is so important. So if you're telling a story that really doesn't matter to you, the audience will feel that.
Yep.
And that is one of the things, like Amy said, I tell my same stories over and over and over, but it's still something that is really personal to me. And I've picked those stories because they are personal to me. And you can feel that as the audience. So make sure when you're going through this that maybe you put a star on something. And we'll get into this later in other
Yeah.
webinars, but put a star on the ones that you're like, yeah, this one really hits home with me. So Amy, you want to start to go through this worksheet, because I think a lot of people may have some questions as to, okay, how does this flow?
Yeah. So the impact moment, I can talk about my Keystone story, right? As an example. So impact moment for me was, it was kind of a typical scenario, but this one moment I remember with my father, and we're fixing something on the farm, and he asked for a hammer, right? And I was like, I went and got the hammer, and he wanted a wrench, right? So that was an impact moment. I'm like, how did I get that wrong? Like, I got this right, but the problem wasn't that I had gotten the wrong hammer or the tool. Problem was the miscommunication on my dad. Like, he was from Norway, so his English sometimes came out completely wrong. And the so that problem was there, and I had to figure out a solution at 8 years old. Like, what do I do with this problem? So the positive result was I went into the shed the next time he asked me, and I grabbed every single tool, right? Like anything I could carry, just in case he needed something else. And it usually was. Um, the negative result was I started overcompensating. I started trying to analyze instead of asking him, like, is it really a hammer you need? Or is it something else? What do you want it for? Asking different questions. That was the negative aspect. I just took care of it. And at 8 years old, I didn't really know what that meant, but I carry that all the way into adulthood. I'll take care of it. Don't worry. I got this. I'll figure it out.
Yeah.
So there was a positive and negative to something that simple. And then, the experience to help save it. So the experience I had with it was, okay, I have to fix this. I have to figure out what to do with this. And I have no help with it. That was my experience.
Right.
And so, where was that from? Obviously, being on the farm with a father who didn't communicate quite right. Um, and what's the last one? It says help
That
where?
help where? So where did it help you in your life
Oh,
understanding this?
right. There's like I said, there's positive and negatives, but that helped me into my career. I actually went into marketing.
Mhm.
Marketing does the exact same thing with people. I'm anticipating their needs. I'm trying to figure out how to help them, even if they don't know themselves. It totally fueled my career.
That's hilarious. Then what would you correlate as if you had to pick two words, two words, two characteristics that correlate to this impact moment in your life?
I would say resilience and inventive. I
Oh,
had
I
to
like it.
invent in my head a scenario and work it out, without
Right.
very little information.
That's huge.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love how you went through that. And I think, you know, it's so important. If you have any questions, please send us an email at believe@yourvoicemasterclass.com. We're more than willing to help and figure out stuff. We also have one-on-one coaching so we can dive even deeper into stuff. But this is a great functional flow for people to understand of how to break down those impact moments. And really, what you're doing here is you're creating it into make a point, tell a story,
Yes.
and you're finding out what that point is, what that problem is that can correlate to other people, that can correlate to other people's situations, environment, whatever it is. maybe what their positive or their negative results could be from that situation, that problem. And then the best part about this last part is, um, when you look at it from what Amy's perspective is, maybe somebody had the same thing happen in an environment that was an educational environment. Okay, well, how did that differ? So now we're starting to correlate all these different things, and then you're putting that final spin on it of what does this impact moment mean to me? What does this impact point deliver to myself to be able to continue to move forward? Or how did it debilitate me? This could obviously, I mean, if you want to kind of pinpointed that this was a problem, Amy.
Oh yeah. It could have stayed a problem. It
Yeah,
really could have. But luckily I decided to do something about it and try to solve it.
right.
Um,
So I think when you look,
yeah.
yeah,
And if you think
yeah,
about similar situations that are a little bit slightly different with my dad, had different impacts because of his communication technique.
right.
And I chose a different path on those techniques. Like one, not talking. I just didn't share because I was afraid I would say something silly because that was kind of a family trait, right? I grew up that way.
Mhm.
And so there was a lot of fear that started coming. My dad can't spell. Like, so I kind of took that on. And I'm like, it's it's one of those things where I'm afraid to like I was terrified as a kid to go up on the whiteboard and write when the teacher asked me to share. I'm like, no.
Yeah,
So that's a very similar situation, but it was a different one. It had totally different impacts, negative and positive to me, where this one was very specific and
right,
on my problem solving and how I made a solution out of it.
right. This
And
is,
it
I mean,
wonderful.
it's so powerful, and I think it's a great tool. And
Yep.
obviously, you're going to use it for a lot of different things, and make sure that you apply it equally to every single story. And this is going to help you to understand of not that it's not that it's bad to have stories that maybe don't have as much value, because I have those
Oh
that are
yeah.
like, these aren't great. But you identified them to make sure that you didn't miss out on anything.
Oh
And so
yeah.
now we get into the action steps. These are the things that you can put into play right now. Amy,
Yeah.
hit it.
So I want that you guys to identify two positive moments. And I know it's a lot easier to do the negative, but I would like you to do the positive first because you got to do a little bit of searching, thinking through that. What shaped you? And strangely, the hammer story shaped me in a positive way, even though I had no idea. And even though in the moment I was very frustrated with that story in my communication with my dad. That's why it's important to break them down to really see what is positive in your life. And I guarantee you there's more than you realize when you start thinking through them.
Oh
And
man.
then of course then go into the negative ones. What were the moments where you were crying? What were the moments where you might have lost something? Where's the moments that was very challenging? And what are stories? And that seemed like Rob said, like 9/11 for him has multiple stories inside that one moment for him. So you might have to go through and go, how many stories is there in this situation that shaped me? You could have 6, 7, that's up to you. Don't stop and don't limit how many stories that one moment might have had for you.
Right. And
How
there's
about you, Rob?
abundance.
Yeah.
I think that's the key to have people understand is this is a huge thing to go through. This is a huge pile of stories, experiences, emotions to tackle. And that's why a lot of people don't do it. They pick the neat ones on the top instead of diving in and really figuring out who you are, why you are that person, what shaped you, and how you're going to continue to move forward. I think those are the things that people have to understand. That this is not easy.
Mhm. No.
And we want you to have a little uncomfortableness when you're going through this, because it is identifying for other people maybe the shortcomings, maybe the hurdles, maybe the scars, the bruises that you had, and you're going to deliver this story to other people with a point that they're going to be able to take and derive into their life, whether it's a little minuscule part of it. That's what we're looking for. That's what we're going for. And for you to really dive into these moments in your life, positive and negative, and pick out the little stories, the little moments within those that you can attach to something that we call our message, our voice.
Yep.
Like,
And don't be afraid to tackle the ones that are really, really painful. And if you're not ready to share them, then do it for yourself. Just work on it, and take a little bit of time and then let it sit, and then go back to it. It doesn't need to be all done in one day. And if you look at this, the sheet and go through it, and if you're stuck and you can't figure out what the problem is, move on to the next arrows.
mm-hmm.
And then really think through the rest. Maybe the problem will show up or the other answers will come in. You don't have to order that or fill it out in order.
Mm-hmm.
Just do the best you can at filling them out.
Yep. And if you have questions, again, I want to accentuate this, and we're doing this for the fact that we think it's so powerful for people to have voices. We think it's so powerful for if everybody could tell their story of how they've gotten to where they are, how powerful it would be for everybody. We are here for you. Believe at yourvoicemasterclass.com. We'll do one-on-one sessions. We are not trying our let's put it this way. Our pricing is made to make sure that people have the opportunity. That is what we're here for. We want you to have that voice. And I think it's so powerful. And we continue, like we said, this is the key right here. The reason why are we doing this?
Yes.
It's so powerful.
Yeah, because your voice is yours. It's nobody else's. It doesn't matter. And you can keep it within yourself too, but if you're wanting to share it, if you're wanting to explore it, this is the best way to do so, is those impact moments. This is like the very first big step of discovering that. Mm-hmm. And then the next step is to be relatable to others, like we've been talking about. Because sometimes we discredit those really simple, everyday kind of stories, but we all have them and they're all relatable because we do. And it doesn't matter, if you're from across the world, you can relate to small moments just as much as the big ones.
Yep. For my foundation, we always have the SMILE acronym: simple moments impact lives every day. So if you think about it from that perspective, think about all the little things that you've done in your life and what they've amounted to. You're still here. You're kicking. You're doing stuff that can help save somebody else's life, that can change somebody else's life. Or maybe if you just find your voice for yourself, maybe it changes your life. And that's what we're here about. And I love these webinars. We're going to continue to have these webinars. There's more to come, isn't there?
Yes, there is. There's so many more to come. We have a full 18 series of them, actually. But the next monthly one is how to introduce yourself. Like, that is really important. Like, I know when I would go into big events or even go up to speak, that was always the most terrifying part, is like the very beginning. Like, what's the first thing that you say out of your mouth?
Yeah.
Because it matters, right? It puts you in a place of power and comfort, or it could put you in a place of fear. So that really is a huge moment to kind of conquer for yourself. And then, of course, we're going to be doing your clothes. And then
look how excited that guy is finding his clothes.
Oh, right.
You see how excited he is? I mean, that's what we're looking for.
Yes. Because land powerfully, don't let it trail off. And that was my problem when I first did it. Like, I would get really into it. And then I'm like, okay, now we're done.
Thanks for coming.
Yeah. Like, well, that was boring. And that wasn't great.
Yeah.
But now I understand that the close is just as important as your intro.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you were going to remember the most, is those two moments, because that's when we first start hearing you and when we stop.
Yep.
And so we're going to go
leads perfectly into the next one.
Right.
Lasting impact. I mean, there's so many great ones. I mean, that's the best thing. And there's a lot of different ways to take advantage of these webinars. Along with the webinars, we also have the in-person sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the hard thing is that the 2 in-person sessions right now are sold out, but we are opening up new ones. Let us know where you're at.
Yeah.
We'd love to be able to travel and find, if you have a group of, whatever, 5 to 10 people, if you have a group that wants to have this session, this in-person session, let us know. It's a deep dive into helping you to create those stories, helping you create your points, helping you create your characteristics, letting you know about more about the speaking industry.
Yep.
So many different things. Are you going to get your story or your speech together in this one weekend, Amy?
Nope.
No.
Does not, unless you're really well, like almost
Yeah.
90% there, but even still, you might change everything based on what
Yeah.
we teach you.
Yep.
So the idea is to get a really great foundation to it
Mm-hmm.
and then continue working on it from there versus, these webinars are great. You can do the same thing in the next 18 months with us. But I know me, when I first started this journey, I was like, I was scared. And I knew if I took little tiny bite sized steps, I was never going to do it.
Yeah.
I needed a more immersive situation. I needed to be able to keep working on it. And so that's why we also have, of course, like Rob mentioned, our one-on-one coaching.
Yeah.
That's how my story came about, was through coaching, through hearing other people's stories to really start to experience and a lot of reflection who I am. And it wasn't a, definitely wasn't a weekend worth of work. It was work to get
Yeah.
this done. And it was worth every effort I did. But having somebody hear your stories, help you help you with the words and being like, tell me more about that. This is really interesting. You kind of alluded to it, but you kind of also pivoted from it.
Right.
What is happening here? And
That's the
so,
key.
yeah, that's the key. Sometimes we avoid what we really want to talk about, and having that one on one coaching really helps for someone else to hear it and go, what aren't you saying?
Definitely. Definitely. Make sure you go to yourvoicemasterclass.com. You're going to find out all the different things that we're doing. We appreciate you joining the webinar today. We will be, our format's going to be awesome. We're going to have an online academy coming up. We're going to have all these different things that you're going to be able to take your steps in the directions that you want to go in. You're going to be able to, in essence, that's to create your own journey, your voice masterclass sessions, right? I
Yeah.
think it's gonna be great. So, but make sure you go to yourvoicemasterclass.com to find out more. And as always, please feel free to reach us out to us at believe@yourvoicemasterclass.com. It's been fun again, Amy.
Yes, always.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. We'll see you at the next webinar for Your Voice Masterclass.